Welcome friends to another r/MaliciousCompliance video. Today we got some awesome stories all revolving around getting fired, and our first story of the day is from P.Logan56. You want to fire me to save a buck? Go right ahead. So I recently met up with my uncle, and while talking about my major, programming computer science, he told me a story of when he got a promotion, his current position, by getting fired. Several years ago, my Uncle Dan had a jerk of a boss who would always flaunt his status of being a manager to the lower-ranked employees and would also be critical of them for the smallest things. Taking 2 or 3 minutes too long on breaks, talking to your coworker for even a second, or even taking a sip from your water bottle at your desk. My uncle and his coworkers hated this guy, but they loved the job, so they just put up with him for the time being. Uncle Dan told me that it was so bad, nobody wanted to even interact with him outside of work, and he wasn't invited to any parties or get-together either. One day, boss decides to save money for the company by firing Dan for poor performance, and tells him the reason why is because they can hire for cheaper. Now, Dan is a calm and logical man. He's very skilled in programming and has years of experience under his belt by that point in his life. So he knows that there would be loads of companies fighting for him. Dan didn't put up much of a fight about it, just cleared out his desk that day, and a month later, while looking for other jobs, he was called by the boss telling him he can get his job back, and when Dan refused because he had a few offers, boss revealed that he was in trouble for firing him with the president. Uncle Dan explained to me that he coded the system they used to distribute assignments and organize tasks, which earned him the president's respect for his skill and expertise. So when he found out he was replaced with someone who, as Dan put it, wouldn't know his butt from an array, he was understandably livid, especially since he didn't hear about it till just now. So, boss was forced to offer Dan his position and a raise to convince him to come back, was demoted, and was even more ostracized for the way he looked down on people in the past. It was a funny story. He gets fired and then is given an even better position and pay. Because his boss was trying to save the company money, he still has that position today, and his pay has only gotten better due to his skills. But the boss couldn't stand being on the same level as the lesser employees that he mocked, so he's not there anymore. For some reason, this is a surprisingly common line of thinking for people in managerial positions. These people on power trips that don't realize just how important and potentially influential the people they're mocking are. They think these people are beneath them and dispensable, and they dispose of them only to just crater the entire wing of whatever place they're working at. If you were good at your job and you knew you would have no trouble finding another position elsewhere, would you walk out of there with your head held high? Or would you still go out complaining, knowing they're firing you because they can hire for cheaper? Let me know how you would feel in the comments down below. By the way, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below so you never miss any of my daily videos. That said, our next story is from Keki. I can't fire you, but let's have the boss catch you in the act. A long time ago, I worked in a decent upscale food service establishment far away, alongside a cast of zany characters, 2 of which happened to be 2 best friends who were hired at around the same time by the boss. Not a case of nepotism, but they definitely sucked up to the boss a lot, and they could do no wrong. The problem with them was that they were shifty, conniving, gossipy, and lazy, and would neglect a lot of their duties in favor of talking loudly together. As far as they were concerned, once their shift was over, they could drop everything, clock out, and leave, because technically, we did not get paid overtime and were not legally required to stay past the end of our shift. There was usually enough time after closing to get things done before the shift ended. Night shift could go one of 2 ways. It could be nice and quiet, and everything that needed to be prepped and cleaned for the morning shift would get done, and you'd close and leave. Or we would get bombarded by large groups of customers, which would keep the staff constantly busy with no time to catch up on the backlog. In these situations, sometimes an extra hour or 2 was required to go through the checklist and get everything prepared for the morning. We weren't paid overtime, but I was willing to put in the extra effort required to finish the checklist because I liked the job and we were paid pretty well anyway. If a few things were skipped, they'd be easy things and that's fine. as long as all of the emphasized important tasks that pretty much had to be done for the morning shift were getting done. I was on a rotating schedule and often worked weekend mornings for 1 or 1.5 day shifts, while also often on weekday night shifts. While these two BFFs were in college and mostly worked weekday nights because the boss wanted them on peak shifts due to their face value for the establishment. Behind the scenes though, they would crap talk and gossip about the other employees, brag about how they have the boss in their pocket, etc., and waste time on smoke breaks or loitering in the back. They'd go to the bathroom together and waste time in there too. They were loud and didn't care if I heard them. I think you get where I'm going. The boss loves them, they slack off. Next morning shift had to work twice as hard to get started up before lunch, or they'll literally run out of prepped food in the middle of it and cause a disaster. I have some seniority, so I decided to confront them because I'd had enough when I came in on a Saturday morning after the Friday night shift and got hit by a big weekend lunch rush where we ran out of everything and had to apologize to customers while frantically prepping in the back to meet demand as everything bottlenecked. Their response? That's just how it is. We clock out when we're done. Deal with it. Okay, I've worked there a while. They don't know that the boss respects me for keeping the place in order. I just wanted to warn them personally instead of going over their heads, but let's see how this plays out. I can't prove that they're slacking off, and the boss kind of just deflects or ignores any complaints about them. I can't outright say, "Boss, they call you a pushover," and worse, without anyone else backing me up. So I just continue to do my job and put up with it. By some stroke of luck, the place was broken into maybe only a few weeks later, and there was some concern about the security system since it was off camera and no suspect was identified. There had been a single standard video camera in the corner which covered the till and general dining area, but it didn't have audio. I had a light bulb moment and suggested to the boss that if we upgrade the whole thing, we needed to add a few cameras around the doors to increase coverage, as well as get audio. The boss was known for skimming through the security tapes from time to time. It's how they caught and fired someone who stole from the till. This was agreed to be a good idea. I knew that this was it. The problem would find a way of dealing with itself now. Things calmed down and went back to normal, but the boss was also now playing around with the new security system and rolling through the new audio-enhanced tapes with heightened attention following the incident. The BFFs went back to their routine too. Guess which two gossipy idiots got fired? Legal note, it is required that employers disclose to employees if they will be recorded by surveillance, and need to consent to do so when they're hired, so when the system was upgraded, they were told about it, but probably forgot or didn't care. Let's be real, these people probably just did not care. They probably expected, considering the level of output that they've been putting in, that other people probably put in a similar level of output. That they wouldn't be checking the audio on security cameras. People who are so boldly lackadaisical and gossiping, they're bound to slip up at some point pretty easily, right? And our final story of the day is from Force Accomplished 890. Stop blaming the person I'm training for the rookie mistakes he's been making. Very well. Okay, so this one happened a while back actually, and it's not as epic as some others here, but still. I used to work as a temp in a cardboard factory. I started out assisting the machine operators in their work, but after the person who managed the materials, cutting forms, printed stamps, and ink, who henceforth shall be referred to as Dave, was forced to take a week off, paid vacation he was forced to take before the end of the year, and the end of the year rush was coming up, and things went south because the floor managers couldn't keep up with his job and their own at the same time. The company decided we needed a second person to do Dave's job to avoid situations like that in the future. They tested several people by having them work together with Dave for a couple of hours, and apparently I was the only one who did a decent job, and so I was told Dave would be training me. I was never asked if I was interested. I didn't even know they were looking for someone to help Dave, until I arrived at work one Monday and my schedule said I would be working with Dave. Of course, I didn't mind because I was already capable of helping operate 8 of the 10 machines in the factory. I figured this was a great way to further solidify an actual contract with the company. Now, during his week off, David met a woman and they started dating. She would constantly text him while he was at work, and it showed in his productivity. Of course, COO figured his drop in productivity was because I was slowing him down. As time went on, Dave's girlfriend moved in with him. Now, I haven't mentioned this yet, but the factory had a 2-shift system, early shift and late shift. Most of us worked in rotating shifts, but Dave had a fixed early shift because he had to be there on Monday mornings. Now, this meant that Dave and his girlfriend could never go out on weekdays and even had to go to bed quite early. So Dave requested to be put back on rotating shifts once he had finished training me. The COO said he would look into it, but kept giving Dave excuses, so Dave started interviewing for another job. Then came the day me and Dave were called into the COO's office and got yelled at for not pulling our weight and stuff like that. One of the things mentioned was repeated tardiness. Dave couldn't deny that one. He had overslept several times in the last few months. But I had only been tardy once because of a flat tire. So, wanting to set the record straight, I tried to interject about my flat tire, and the COO snapped at me to keep my trap shut while he's talking. So after his rant, and he dismisses us from his office, I once again bring up the flat tire. And he just snaps at me again that I should have just avoided having a flat tire. That was the last drop for Dave. He got home, wrote his letter of resignation, mailed it to the COO, and accepted one of the job offers he had gotten that week. For the next 3 months, I'm stuck doing all the work on my own. Also, during this time, due to a change in the laws of my country, I might become homeless unless I get a contract. So I start asking the COO for a contract since I've been there 2.5 years as a temp at that point. Just like with Dave, he keeps giving me excuses. After an incident with them refusing any vacation time request I put in that included a Monday, they finally gave me someone to train to be my second. Let's call him Abdul. About a month after I started training Abdul, I get called into the floor manager's office. Apparently a mistake was made somewhere, and he asks me how that happened. Now, that was the first week I was letting Abdul work independently without me, constantly telling him what to do. So I tell the floor manager that Abdul had done that job and I'd not yet had the chance to inspect his work. The floor manager grumbles but just dismisses me. A week later, I get called in for a similar situation. So again, I point out that Abdul is learning and mistakes will be made. So this time, the floor manager blows up at me that I have to stop blaming everything on Abdul. And if I blame one more mistake on Abdul being a rookie, he's getting me fired. This is where the compliance comes in. Around the same time, me and Abdul were put in opposing shifts. My first order of business every day would be to double check all of Abdul's work and fix any mistakes. I couldn't inform him of his mistakes, so he kept making them. Abdul also started to get sneaky. You see, parts of our tasks had to be done in an area of the factory where only the two of us would frequently go. So Abdul would do all the work that was to be done where people could see him work, leaving me with all the tasks behind the scenes, meaning I was never anywhere to be found. We also had these big barrels of ink, which were hooked up to a machine that mixed the basic colors of ink into other colors. Abdul had always refused to change these barrels when they were empty. He would usually state that he hadn't had the time, even though making sure those other barrels aren't empty was a priority job. This eventually all culminates into a moment about 8 months after Dave left, where I am once again called into the COO's office. I'm thinking I'm finally getting my contract after 3 years as a temp. I'm also convinced Abdul got a contract the week before, though Abdul and the COO have always denied that. Instead, I'm told I'm fired. The COO also goes out of his way to inform me that he's been wanting to fire me for 6 months now because he blames me for Dave quitting, but was asked not to by the floor managers until I'd trained someone to replace me, and they considered Abdul to be ready to do the job now. He also told me that he did appreciate the work I did, he just had a problem with me personally. After my meeting with the COO, I make my round of the factory to inform my coworkers that I've been fired and to say goodbye. The look on Abdul's face was pure panic. He suddenly realized that despite me demonstrating how to change those ink barrels, he had never actually done it himself, and as such, didn't remember how to do it. A week after I left, I got a message from one of my former coworkers that the entire factory was looking to go to the COO's office and demand they rehire me because Abdul was not only doing a poor job, but he was also being a megalomaniac. I told her not to bother because if they did rehire me, it would only make the COO hate me even more. Several months after, another former coworker informed me that not even a month after I was fired, Abdul was demoted back to assistant machine operator, and one of the floor managers had to take over his tasks full time. OP said in the comments that thankfully they found a loophole in the laws so they could stay where they were living, but they haven't necessarily been able to move up from that point. They've been pretty much still living in the same dump they lived in back when this story took place. But regardless, it's nice to have a story that you can look back on where you were telling the truth, they didn't believe you, and they found out the very hard way. I hope that COO knows how much of a screw-up job they've made in retrospect, but they seem like a bit of a narcissist, so I kind of doubt it. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy compliance story, click on that left video, or if you missed my latest video, check out the one on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.